No. Oh, not group. No, not group. There we go. There. All right. So it looks like we are live. So, all right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Joffrey Strout. This is another live stream from the Christian Comic Arts Society. Today, we are joined by Comix35 Next Gen President Jose Carlos Gutierrez. Comix35 Next Gen is a Christian ministry that has been offering international training and coaching on effectively producing and using printed and digital comic style literature to spread God's word since 1996. So welcome, Jose. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. My pleasure being here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I know a little bit about the ministry that that Nate Butler was involved with, but I'm not so familiar with yourself. So how about, why don't you give us a kind of a little introduction to yourself and like how you got started in the ministry in the first place?
Well, I knew about the ministry in 2005. It has already been in activities for 10 years, I guess. But I knew about the first International Christian Comics competition. So for me, that was amazing, to have comics to share your testimony or any story related to experience with God. So that's when I entered. But I entered in the amateur category because at that time I haven't done any professional comic. I have a major in graphic design with a minor in visual arts. So mainly I was into commercial design. I was working in the design firm. I've been doing freelance jobs. So I entered, and it was for me a great challenge because that was the first time I ever wrote a script. The guidelines were to make a 4 pages comic about your experience with God. So I make like a fictional story with the parts of my experience, part of other people that I've met, young people mainly, whose lives have been transformed by God. So I wrote it, I drew it, and by God's grace, I won the first place. So that was a huge deal for me. I was amazed. And I had to do it in English. It was the first time I wrote anything like completely in English from scratch. Spanish is my native language. So that's when I started emailing back and forth with Nate. He wrote to announce that our comic, because I did it with a friend from church, who's also named Carlos Eduardo. And he announced that we won. And then I remember that I used to call him Mr. Butler. Now we're really good friends. He's been my mentor. We have traveled together. And that was my first involvement with the ministry.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Okay, so let's, for those who are not familiar with ministry, can you give like a nutshell for what the ministry is about? And maybe explain the name. Comix35, now Next Gen, but the Comix35, that might be puzzling to some people. Like, what's that about?
Yeah, actually, I have a daughter and a son, and my younger daughter, she's 8, and she was asking me today about why is the 35 in the name. So it's because it's based on Exodus 35, from 30 to 35, when God made a calling to artists for the tabernacle. And he gave them the wisdom and the ability not only to make designs, but only to teach others. So that's why the 35 is there. And comics is because it's the X in Exodus, and also it's a symbol of the cross of Christ.
Okay, so maybe give us a little bit of a history. Like you mentioned Nate. So it's you're like, you've sort of taken over from Nate. But give us a background on Comix35 and what ministry was involved with, and then tell us about yourself and where you came into the picture and what you're doing now.
Yeah, well, the ministry is about sharing the gospel, mainly through comics, but only through visual storytelling, by consultation, coaching, and training others, and also by doing partnership with others to produce any kind of material. Nowadays, also digitally, like animation and all that. But a great part of the ministry has been teaching. Nate gave a lot of live seminars. The basic structure of a seminar was about from 3 to 5 days, like intensive seminars, along with local teachers, so we could get the main ideas, languages, codes to help other people do Christian comics and write their own scripts, do the drawings, and know about storytelling as well. So now we obviously, because of the pandemic, we're doing it virtually, and I started leading the ministry at the beginning of 2020, because Nate retired in 2019. But I was in training in 2010. He made a project. God inspired him to make a project to call people and to select people that wanted to be involved in the ministry after he retired. So by God's grace, I was selected in 2010, and I was traveling with him to know what he did in different countries. We went to Japan, to Canada. We went to the States, different places. He came to Mexico City. We hosted a seminar here. And then I kept working with him in some projects, and God's time is perfect. So after a couple of years later from that time, he asked me to take over when his retirement was coming to getting close.
So, so talk a little bit about the international aspect of the ministry. I think that's one of the things that I think stands out to me as fairly unique. There's a lot of ministries that are that will sort of tackle the training, but just in a very homogenous sort of way. Like everybody gets the same sort of training and everybody just does the same thing. It really seemed to me that Nate was focusing on trying to go out to other cultures and with different languages and try to empower those that were from the culture to sort of communicate from within that culture. Am I right? And is there anything else there that you?
Yeah, exactly. It's a very, very missions focused ministry, because it started with trainings in the Philippines and in many places in Asia and Europe. And some of the things that we do, and I learned that from Nate, is to pray and contact people from different areas, different regions, to where the need of the gospel is urgent, and also people that is involved or interested in visual storytelling. For example, he was telling me the story of how he started doing training seminars in Mexico, and he was looking online to a ministry or a publishing house, a Christian publishing house that was interested, and he contacted Milamex. That is a ministry not only in publishing but also in training others, in ministering, doing events for women, for men, and they have been partnerships. Well, they've been partnering in doing the Christian comic seminars in 2002, I think. So that's what we do. I mean, now it's what I do. I keep some of the contacts from Comix35. We have currently projects in Africa, with a youth magazine that it's called Timazi, that it's targeted to high schoolers in Christian high schools, and we insert short comics. Also, I've been working with a missions comic that it's with panels and storytelling, but without text dialogues. Everything with visual storytelling, so missionaries can use it with, any kind of culture, tribe, or town that haven't heard about the gospel.
Wow, yeah, that's a tall order. That's quite a challenge to do everything with no dialogue. Have you found that there are any barriers to doing that? I mean, I'm an artist myself, so I've been trying to learn how to tell stories visually most of my life, and I'm aware that there are some aspects that are cultural, right? Something that some visual things that might speak to one culture but not speak this quite the same to the other. Have you run into that very much?
Yeah, well, working with this project, I've learned a lot about these barriers, so to speak. Well, I have actually, we just finished it yesterday. I'm going to show here. Look, this is how it looks. It's black and white.
Wow.
And it only has yellow to show the presence of God, for example, and how I got one here that I love it. For example, here, this one. When people are saved, they like kind of glow, so you can explain them what's to have a personal relationship with God.
Okay.
So, and one of the things that I've learned through the process, for example, are there was one scene when a man is on bed lying there, and I drew a bed, and the missionary who wrote the script, he told me that many cultures in some tribes that they don't use a bed. You know, they have like they sleep at the ground level. So we needed to change that. And for example, there's another scene where a man dies and he's saved and he goes to Jesus. So he said, oh, make him getting closer to Jesus and being with them. And so I draw it, hugging him, and he's like, oh, in many cultures that's not going to be well received. So it's like make him with the hands extended, but not quite, hugging. And very interesting. I've learned a lot in this project.
Yeah. I hope you're taking notes. Like that'd be really valuable to pass on to like anyone in a multicultural sort of environment. Those things are probably not widely known. I imagine that, of course, in the culture they would be very obvious for them, but anyone outside, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really amazing. That's so. How many of the works that you guys work on end up being no dialogue? Is that very common? Is that
no? Well, for me, this is the first time that I do something in comics format, with panels and everything, and no dialogue at all. So it's quite a challenge because the visual storytelling has to be really expressive, easy to read, and at the same time, it needs to work without dialogues, and it's because it has a really detailed and worked script, like with missionary focusing, because I'm amazed. I love when and you may understand when you get a script that is detailed and the author knows what he wants from, not exactly that they give artistic freedom, but they know the idea, what they want to express. So this has been the case. So it's been totally a teamwork and a great learning process for me.
That's great. That's really cool. Well, so as I understand it, a lot of what Nate did, and it sounds like what you're doing, is you're helping, not necessarily you doing all the work. It sounds like this is your project that you're working on, but like a lot of your work is you're trying to help other people learn how to. It sounds like you're trying to do a lot of things in one short, small way. You're trying to introduce them to like how to do comics, which is like visual storytelling, sort of the language of comics visually, but also like how to use that to share the gospel or God's word. And all right, is that most of the work that you do? Is it the training other people to do the work, or do you find you're producing work as well?
Well, about both of them. Currently, we're more focused on producing projects because we have been contacted about some other authors and ministries, and that we are like on the wait for our next virtual webinar. We did a couple at the beginning of the lockdown, partnering with Melamex in Mexico, and with the same version in Spanish and in English. And it was about how to make short comics for magazines, because I found that it's really a helpful tool to make short comics into already existing publications. So that's a great way for authors, illustrators, artists to get known and not struggle to have a complete graphic novel or a complete series of comics and finding a publishing house and everything. And there's a lot of magazines worldwide open for publishing Christian comics.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, that's exciting. I now that you mention it, it seems like a very good idea, but I had never thought of that. So you're helping your students from the workshops to kind of find the opportunities like that they could contribute to.
Yeah. The last seminar Nate and I taught in Mexico City was hosted by a missionary agency from the church I attend, Baptist Church, and it's a really big church, like 3,000 members. We're in Mexico City, big church. I mean, big city, big churches. So the missionary agency asked us to give a training seminar, and we have like I don't know, 17 students, which is a lot. And some of the works that were created that have been published afterwards. One page script, we turned it into a motion comic. That it's a way that I like a lot, and I think it's really helpful nowadays that we are literally in a virtual world, to use a little bit of animation into making the comics alive, but still, having speech balloons and panels and everything. And another one, it's in the process to being published by a magazine focused to young girls, and it was made by a girl at the training seminar. So yeah, we're always in the seminars we've had, we encourage students to make finished artwork, because they have great ideas and sometimes they don't finish it. But if they cannot or they're not in possibility, we help them with the digitally coloring or adding text and all that. But yeah, that's the main idea of the seminars, to help them to publish and make their work come to light.
Wow. So would you say that the seminars you do are primarily focused towards people who are already artists interested in comic books already, or do you feel is your experience that the seminars you do are something that somebody who isn't necessarily into comics yet might benefit from?
Yeah, no, we open it to all public that wants to work with comics, and they don't have to be artists or writers. Sometimes we've had pastors as students, or people that are writers that they cannot draw, but they have great skills into doing stories. And sometimes ministry leaders that they want to use comics, so they want to learn the process of how a comic is made, and that's why we taught all of the process of creating a comic. And also that like the old school way, that way you have somebody for inking, somebody for penciling, somebody for lettering, even though it's not the same nowadays with all the digital tools, computer and everything. But it's important that they understand the complete process, and especially that creating comics is a teamwork. You have to work with an editor, you have to work with other people in order to learn. And that's why it has been my process, learning from editors, telling me, oh, this is not going to work. Maybe you have to add this or that, or have the character learn something from the Bible and then change his or her behavior.
That's an interesting question. I was able to sit in on part of one of Nate's seminars, and it seemed like it was at that point, like it was just one person was doing their own comic, and that was it. It was they're doing everything. But it sounds like you're talking about teamwork, which is really a great. I mean, it sort of opens that door, right? There's a lot more people that can be involved. So do you work with people, say they are a writer? Is some of the things that you work to try to help connect people to like those who have different skills that might let them, team up to make one?
Yeah, definitely. That's one of our activities, mentor people, coach them. Sometimes we get emails or messages asking or telling us that they open for commissions, and then we have a publishing house looking for artists, and we connect them. And also we encourage, we're open for people to submit the work, and because I remember how I started. I didn't draw the way I did, and sometimes I feel frustrated because I was comparing myself to others. So it's about, I tell them, the students, just keep creating, share your work, seek for advice, and main of all, pray and persevere.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm not sure if this would work, but someone in we have a comment that someone would love to see an example of a motion comic that got produced.
Oh, well, we have one in our YouTube channel that you can find us as Comix35 Next Gen, and we only have like 2 videos, a small animation we did for based on the plagues from Exodus, that it was intended to be a promotional commercial for a book that we did also the cover, and it ended up being short that went into different festivals and has been recognized by God's grace. And we have the other videos of the motion comic. We only have 2 videos and a couple of likes, but I know this is how God's kingdom works, with seeds that keep growing, that He makes growth.
That's great. That's really so. We'll put links to that at the once the our interview is done here. So we'll make sure that we'll have links for that. But just on your YouTube channel, do you have is it YouTube / something, or is it just?
It's a Comix35 Next Gen. That's our name in Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn for all to use it.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm curious about you mentioned, because what I experienced with Nate was he was focused mostly on just your traditional paper and pencil and just making a comic. But as the questioner mentioned, the things like motion comics are now a thing, and motion comics are kind of a blend into animation, right? It's sort of moving the disciplines closer together. So do you find that as the technology sort of progressing, making it easier for people to do things like animation, that you're finding people who want to do animation or take their comics and make animations with them? Is that becoming more common? Is that something you guys focus on, or is that outside of your scope?
No, yeah. Well, we have some of the comics. Well, for example, this motion comic we did. In this case, and then the animator made the graphics and the motions as well, but it was based on the sketches and the script of a student we had. And some of the projects we have worked for animation, we have an animator and somebody else do the graphics, or I made them, and it's totally teamwork. Because I found a lot of animators really skilled, and that they can in a couple of hours make everything move. And some people are more into doing graphics, so it's like totally like the body of Christ in this project.
That's cool. Yeah. So let's see. Hold on, we got a couple more questions and comments. I think someone's asking if there are any opportunities that you know of for people to do that sort of work in Mexico. I'm not sure if it's in Spanish, so I'm just looking at the translation. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, well, speaking about motion comics or comics, I don't know which part the question is referring to, but for example, talking about publishing comics, Millimex has a lot of publications targeted to different people, for men, for women, for young women, for all the family, and they are really open to publish comics. And now it's better because when I started publishing with them, it was in black and white, because most of the pages of the magazine were in black and white. So now that they are done digitally, you can go crazy with coloring and all that. So yeah, and I know Sally Isa is the leader of the ministry. She's a good friend of mine. She's a good friend of Nate, and she's really open into encouraging and mentoring the young generations as well.
That's awesome. That's excellent. So let's talk about the like, if you were to talk to somebody and they were interested in like what you did, let's say somebody wanted to kind of help further the ministry. What are some things that people can do to help you do more of what you do, or somehow, be part of the spreading your work more?
Well, one of the things that anybody can help is sharing what we do or what we post on social media, and that's a big help. That's huge, because that's how things get discovered. Or well, mainly I'm focused that what it says in the Bible, that God's word never comes back empty. So everything we do is Bible based, and I definitely trust, and I'm sure that it's going to do something to anybody that says it. So we are open also for people who want to volunteer in social media and in helping us posting and all that, because that's a lot sometimes to do. Recently, we have also, well, I have started to manage the International Christian Comics Facebook page and the website as well. So that's a lot of work into spreading the word about Christian comics worldwide. So that's a lot of help. And when we have projects that require art, sometimes I contact people that have already asked me that they want to work with us. So if you are open to work with us, just get in touch, and we can do something together.
Excellent. So say somebody is like, hears about what you do, and they think like, that would be great, I want that to happen in my church, or I want to offer something like that in my neck of the woods. What would you say to that person? What's they can do?
Yeah, well, they can ask for they can ask us to for a training seminar. How it works is that we need a hosting organization ministry to manage the logistics. Nowadays it's easier because usually when it's live, you're talking about a venue with desks and paper, and that is well lit and everything. But nowadays it's only about setting a Zoom link, having a couple of teachers, local teachers. We team up with them, and then making all the registration and all that stuff. And it's going to be also cheaper because we don't charge for the training seminars. It's a ministry. We have donors who contribute, and that's how we can do free projects, like the mushroom comic or the comics in Africa. They're paid by our donors.
Oh, wow.
So nowadays it's easier to set up a training seminar, and we're totally open. And we have also a lot of artists, teachers from many countries that are really happy to come on board as well for training seminars.
So say there's somebody, we have some artists in our group as well with varying levels of skill, some of them very skilled. What's if somebody were to think, hey, that sounds great, I might be interested in being one of those teaching artists, what would you say to somebody like that?
Yeah, well, to get in touch, for example, how we work with the seminars, we have like 4 or 3 or maybe sometimes 5 teachers, and we create like the basic curriculum depending on the days or hours the seminar is going to last. And then we have somebody teaching about, for example, character design, somebody about storytelling, somebody about perspective, somebody else teaching about theology as well, because sometimes it's important to know what we're doing, and sometimes we have new believers and people that are more experienced in church, but we also need some guidance in a spiritual level. And we start also every day with devotionals and prayers and all that. So
that's cool. So say there's somebody who has skill in only one of those areas, maybe they're good at concept or character design, like you, that might be somebody that you could have as one of the people that would help.
Yeah, definitely.
That's neat. So like describe, maybe just give me a little bit more of a snapshot of what the whole thing, like if you do a seminar, is that what does it look like from like the beginning to the end? Is this a it's a multi-day thing still? If you're doing it on Zoom, do you still do it over the course of multiple days? Like, how does that play out normally?
Yeah, well, we haven't done a like a virtual seminar in nowadays. We have done webinars, but we have talked with some organizations that how it would be. So yeah, and we have done some like research and asking people how many classes do you think might be good, or how, I mean, what would be the time lapse, like 1 month, 2 months, and have 1 or 2 hours a week. So I think it might be something like that, have like weekly classes in a time span of, I don't know, 1 month or 1.5 months, so we can do homework and have maybe consultations during weekdays, and also like short lessons, because you work or you go to school or whatever, and you want to spend like a lot of extra time behind the screen.
Yeah, everybody's on the screen these days, right? So yeah, so it sounds to me like so you're saying that you used to do, when everybody was free to move around the world freely, you guys would do your like a full seminar, and you do it on location, and you do it multiple days. So
yeah,
now,
3 days, but was like the media. We started like on Friday through Sunday, for example.
So yeah, so you have a whole like full weekend sort of thing, and then, but since that's things are restricted now. So you're saying that you have a new kind of version that you're doing, or at least you're sort of working towards, sort of prototyping that would fit for the new virtual reality that many of us live in. So is that something that you have, like if somebody contacted you tomorrow and said like we'd love to try something like that, you guys would just like what would that look like if somebody said that to you?
Yeah, definitely, because we have the past curriculums that we've taught in other seminars, and based on their needs and the age of the students or anything, we set up, I mean, like really quick, and also based on the how many teachers we can have, and what they can teach, and yeah, but it's not like like something that it would take a lot of time.
So the version you just were describing just shortly ago, like it sounds like instead of that full weekend thing, you're talking about spreading that out in shorter teaching segments with homework, and spreading that out over like virtual connections over like a whole month. Is that right? Like,
yeah, and if there's the conditions that we can do it live with a small group, and safe distance and everything, we can also do that. I've taken my vaccinations and have my visa and everything. So if that's the case, I mean, we're not close to that option. If the health conditions are set.
Right. Yeah. Amazing. Lord willing, that will happen soon, and we'll be back to that at some point very soon. Awesome. Okay, so just let me ask you a couple questions that occurred to me. If so, it sounds like it's like what I loved about what I've heard about from Nate and what you're describing. It sounds like you guys are very focused on trying to stay close to the Word, to God's Word, and to be very faithful to that. And so there's a lot of what I've heard Nate talk about. Most of it he described was about evangelism. So some people I know are have a heart to do work that's not necessarily evangelistic. Do you guys have are you mostly focused on evangelism, or do you guys have training or teaching that sort of might help people do stuff that's like God focused and honoring to God's word, but maybe not evangelistic? Is that something you guys cover, or is it mostly just evangelism?
Yeah, definitely. When I've taught some workshops, I talk about all the kind of Christian comics you can make. Some of them can be for evangelism, some of them for teaching, some of them for could be fiction, Christian fiction, that you're going to find something entertaining, but that's going to be clean, that has going to be like a lesson, and it's not going to be it won't display like a lot of, I mean, like graphic violence or destructive things. So yeah, and in the seminars we have like a lot of different ranges that students are interested into. I mean, like sometimes it's really humoristic, sometimes really into romance as well, or coming to age stories. So yeah, it's not only about evangelism, but based on Christian values.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. Hold on, I think we have a question here. So we have one of our comments is someone's wondering, they're curious about what motivated you to become towards doing this specific kind of ministry in the first place.
Well, that's a really good question. So I'll try to be short. I got saved when I was 24 years old. I met somebody who invited me to church. I didn't went the first time, but then I realized that I have taken some destructive choices in my life, that I wanted to have a relationship with God. So I contacted my friend and I said, "Oh, remember the place you invited me to? I want to go." Like 8 months after he invited me the first time, and I went to church. I loved, the music, how I felt, the message, really practical, how I can put it into practice. And then I never stopped attending church since January of 2002. And then I realized, I learned that God's give us the skills, the wisdom, and even the body to work. So I was so upset to know that the skills He have given me, I have used them only for myself, or for the world. So I wanted to do something that could honor God, and that could help others to feel the same way and I was feeling, and to have a life-changing decisions as I did, based on a personal relationship with Jesus. So for a couple of months I was like thinking, what can I do, and I didn't know, but I was always sketching and drawing in the here in the pastor's sermon. So when I found about Comix35, I was like, this is so neat. I mean, this is what I wanted to.
Wow, yeah, that's awesome. It seemed like it was a good fit for you. And so that was when you mentioned you did the entered the contest, and that's sort of what got you connected to them. So it's neat.
Yeah, a couple of years after I got saved, like 3 years after that.
Well, so you've taught, been involved in teaching a bunch of different artists. Sounds like. What are some basic stuff that you would share with artists who are like, hey, they know they want to do comics, they love to get into it, they want to honor God with their work. What are some advice that you would give to them, like a couple pieces of advice that you think would be the most helpful to somebody who's just starting out, just wondering how what to do with that gift, or that interest?
Well, I would say, like to draw on a daily basis and to pray. I think that would be like, if you tell me like what would be like totally necessary, pray and draw, because that's what I did. I mean, I sometimes I draw some ideas I learned from the Bible. Sometimes I was doing my morning devotional, and I drew, like Proverbs or a Bible scene, and then also I think it's very important to know what's going on with visual storytelling in the church, and also in like nowadays, it's not like you need to know about everything, but mainly about for example, I love movies, so I watch a lot of movies. I used to go a lot to the movies with my family or with my wife, sometimes. And I also like to read not only things that I like in terms of for example, science fiction, but sometimes things that are more for teenagers or for other audiences, or read magazines about sports and about architecture and about history. So, because I read once, I learned a lot about using the Will Eisner books about storytelling.
Yeah,
and he says that as comic creators, we need to know about a lot of subjects, because you don't know what's going to come handy when you're creating a story. And that's become a reality for myself, nowadays that I'm working with the different cultures and authors or artists. I use everything that I've learned. I'm 44 years old now, so I have a teacher that said the experience is how many mistakes you've gathered through a life. So that's why I have a lot of experience. I've gathered a lot of mistakes and I've learned from them. So that's some of the things that I teach in the workshops or presentations.
Awesome. So I'm curious. Are there any things that you expected when you were getting into this ministry? Anything that surprised you that you thought would be, what you saw was not what you thought it would be like? Anything stick out to you as like something that didn't fit what you thought?
Yeah. Well, as I've learned, the lights and the lights and bolts of the ministry. Now, there's a saying, I don't know if I said it right, all the backstage of the ministry, managing the project, doing all the financial work, that's become, because it's time consuming. I would like to sit all day and draw, but you have to, know about the administration and have to use wisely all the resources and have the equipment to use. And then all the things running and getting in touch with the donors, and that's been kind of the most difficult part for me, because I was not used to do that. So it's a challenge. I enjoy it, and I've also asked counseling from people that has more experience than me in ministry, people that can mentor me and pray for me. Yeah, so that's very important. So if you wanted to be into ministry and lead anything, and you may know about it, you have also to learn about math and people and have learn about writing skills as well.
So yeah, that's interesting. So how does writing come into, like, it seems to me like the you're mentioning trying, having to manage the back end, the financials, the organizational stuff. That makes a lot of sense. Somebody has to do it, right? But you mentioned writing. Like, where do you find the writing comes into it?
Yeah, well, for example, I've learned and how to write scripts, along the way. Because then the first one I did, now that I look at it, I was like, oh, the last page is really crumbled with text. And then I've learned from books. I learned from Nate in the workshops I've been teaching along with them, from other teachers, and also from an organization that it's been a really good friend of the ministry, that it's called Media Associates International, MAI, that I'm honored to be part of the International Trust of International Board of Directors since 2 years ago. And they've helped me a lot, because this organization, they host, they focus on training publishers, authors, writers, experienced, upcoming artists from all the world. So in 2012, I got the blessing to go to Kenya for the event they hold every three years. So, but I went invited by a friend, Kayla Ochoa, who was also a writer and a friend of mine, and I knew about the ministry through her, because she made Nate in another country. So I learned from editors, from other authors, from fiction authors, theology authors, from publishers, because there's a lot of people to go there. And I met also it was a big coincidence. I always speak about it, because I met a girl, Ivanova, from Cameroon, and she's a writer. And we have worked a lot with her, because I was there, and she saw one of the books that I had, and she's like, "Oh, I know this logo, and it's Comix35." And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Oh, I just took a training seminar with Nate last week in Africa, and we were in Kenya." And then when I came back to Mexico, I told her about the magazines and the comics, and she was like, "Yeah, I want to do a comic like that." And she sent me a script. So we did it, and it was published in the magazine of Kenya, and that was like international collaboration because she did the script, I did the drawings, and the designer of the magazine, James, he did the coloring, and it was published. And now it's like a teamwork that we have for publishing comics in Kenya. But I go there to be, well, I used to go, now I've started also helping others, but I learn from people that are totally into writing. They share about their writing techniques, where they get inspiration, how they write on a daily basis. And that has helped me a lot to putting all that into comics.
It sounds like you're primarily we're focused on the art side of things, and now that you're more involved, now you're actually doing the art, the writing for the drawings as well. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, well, I do both, but I prefer somebody else to do the writing because I can focus. But also when I get a script, I send it to an editor or ask somebody to give a look, and then sometimes I get to do the translation as well from French into English or into Spanish, and that's something that I can do. But it's more difficult for me to start writing a story than drawing it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm the same. So yeah, you mentioned, is it Media Associates International? Am I saying?
Yeah, that's the name of the organization.
So that sounds like they have a somewhat similar mission to what you guys are doing. So can you kind of clarify? Just, I'm really interested in that, and I want to make sure if someone else is interested that they hear kind of the whole scoop. So what's their mission, and how is that?
Yeah, well, in a phrase, what they do is satisfy the hunger for the written word. Speaking about the word of God and the word of God written in any kind of format, fiction or teachings, or all kind of literature genres. And they do a lot of training, like live training, now virtual training as well, in different parts of the world. I mean, they started in the United States. Now they have different offices in Asia, Africa, Europe, and we're starting the one group. Actually, we just did 1 year with a Facebook group, and we're hoping to have like an office for Latin America. So we one of the things they do, or we do, is hosts webinars, monthly webinars, or twice a month, with different topics, even podcasting, comics. They really open into comics. They invited me to Singapore in 2018. That was also the last time I taught with Nate and overseas, and webinars, training, and connecting people. And I've met a lot of artists and writers that I've worked with doing comics, and also that I've learned like life lessons from there.
That's awesome. Hold on, we got another question here. Commenter says they're curious, what are some of the challenges and benefits that you experience with international collaboration? So challenges and benefits of international collaboration.
Well, challenges. Yeah, well, challenges are like a lot, starting from formats, and recently for the magazine Timazi in Africa, I was working with the editor, and she told me, "Can you make it 4 pages? No, 2 pages long." So the script was about kind of long, so I make it into 2 pages. Then I sent it, and she said, "No, I meant 2 spreads, like 4 single pages."
Yeah, okay.
But I don't know if it's everywhere in magazine language. They took in 1 page, it's 1 spread. So I had to redo it. and I the challenges are as well like the benefits, because I learned from them. For example, for this same comic, let me show you, because I get here we haven't published it yet online, but I have the character sheets here.
Okay.
These are the main characters of the recent comic with that. It's Nyundo and Muthani. They're high schoolers, and they're the protagonists. But the first time I did them, I made them with the guy with the dreadlocks and really formal. And the editor told me, "Oh, that's not allowed in Christian high schools here. So you have to change and they have to wear uniform. So I had to start looking for references, and along the script, even the author for Ivanova from Cameroon, she had the character talking in his cell phone and everything. And Maggie, the editor, told us, oh, they're not allowed to use cell phones when at school. So it was constantly changing, but it was also a learning process. Yeah. So the benefit, it's I don't know, how can I say, well, glorifying God that I can work with people from all over the world and that are like thousands of miles away for a single purpose. And it's really interesting as well. So yeah, and also one of the challenges is, for me to express myself clear and in English and according to the culture, and being open to suggestions and being open to feedback and serve them, because we're doing the work for the readers, not for us. So yeah, that's how can I resume that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, even if my experience has been, even if everyone in the room is from the same culture and they all speak the same language, it's still hard to have like that, conversation be 100%, right? It's still like communication often breaks down. So doing it across different languages, that sounds like it would be a challenge. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, so all right. So if there's any I'm curious, we're almost out of time. We're running down on our time. So I'm curious, like if there is anything that sticks out to you as important that you would want people to know that we haven't talked about yet.
Oh, well, one of the things that I want to share always with everybody where I'm traveling or teaching is that everybody can be involved in Christian comics creation process. Because as I said before, it's a teamwork, and sometimes we have students that they don't even know anything about drawing or anything about writing, but they like it. And sometimes they mentor somebody at church and they guide them towards us or towards doing Christian comics, not necessarily towards us, but well, they seek for advice and everything. So I want, to let everybody know that doing visual storytelling to share the gospel or to do a Christian fiction or anything like that, can be open to anybody. Sometimes somebody can have the idea and they can gather, a team, and then they can, manage the project or pray for them or donate some resources. It doesn't have to be like money, but like, I don't know, like the Zoom link, or even encouraging, giving encouragement to other people. That's something really valuable, So yeah, that's some of the things that I won't always share, because also that has been my experience, because I never studied to be a comic artist. I've learned in the process, and I've learned from many people that have been really patient with me, starting from Nate and other people that have encouraged me and pray for me and be there, so to speak, even nowadays spiritually.
Yeah. So you mentioned you weren't formally trained. So I mean, yeah, it seems like nowadays almost anything is something you can find training on how to do almost anything with the internet. Are there any resources that you found particularly useful for learning the skills that you now have?
Yeah, well, Christian Comics Art Society is one of them. I've learned a lot from the episodes you have. I watched the one with Sergio Carriello, Mario De Matteo, and I even downloaded the brushes that they suggested.
Nice.
And when on YouTube, I found, I'm going to think, YouTube, I watch for tutorials and specific skills like how to ink, how to draw. But the most thing that I have trouble with is finding how to write scripts for comics. So I bought some books. I bought one, well, the one from Will Eisner. I have them. I bought them. At that time I was barely graduated, and I saved to buy them. And I read them. And for example, there are some BC Comics books on how to ink, how to write the BC Comics style. So I think books are a really, really helpful tool for me, and how to do graphic novels as well. And you know what? Also the art of the movies that I like, the animation movies that I like, I bought the art books, because you see a lot of sketches and the ideas that didn't came out, and that's really valuable in the process. That is why I tell people every time that I give a lesson, that somebody asks me, like, sketching is really important part of creating anything, but it's really important in creating comics as well.
Yeah, I want to also like throw in the art of books are amazing. It's to me kind of tragic that so much of the art that is brilliant, amazing artwork that is done before the movies are made, we never see. Like the public never sees about like 90% of that, and some of it gets added, put into these books, and just that as little nuggets of gold. I mean, they're just so good. Like there's amazing artists that work in those fields. So I also am a big fan of those books. Like they're just like a master class in like many different steps. Right.
Yeah, totally. That's what I gather a lot of sketches, and I'm struggling with my wife sometimes. Like, no, this is learning material for somebody. It's not like I want to get hold of them, but sometimes for the webinars or like the workshops, I like to show the process of how it started and how was the final art. Because sometimes I used to think that it was so easy, but it isn't. It takes a lot of work.
Yeah, I used to think. I mean, this took me a while, but I used to look at the artists that I loved and their final work, and I would think, oh, it just they just did it, just like that, the first try. And I just was so discouraged, because I never could do it the first try, And then I got to meet some artists who were really good, and they would show me, it sort of build up over time. You do sketches and refine and layers. And I was, after a while, I was like, oh, it's wait, removed a lot of that stress, right? The pressure is off, right? You don't have to do it perfect the first try. So.
Yeah, and also sketching from observation, sketching landscapes, buildings, people, pets, whatever. Because some people ask me, how do you learn to draw? Well, like copying things, copying cartoons, copying things from magazines, copying things from the outside. That's how I learned to draw, because drawing is not about how well you do it. It's how well you observe, how well you understand, and how well you memorize things that you can make them into the drawing. Yeah,
drawing from life it sounds boring. If you're not in the right mindset, you might think, oh, but that's not the fun stuff. It's like, no, that's where the fun stuff comes from, right? You gotta learn those things. What's the real life look like, so you can make the modified, cool looking stuff. All right, so we are absolutely out of time now, I guess. Where can people find you and your work online if they want to learn more or keep up with what you're doing?
Yeah, you can find us in Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. That's Comix35 Next Gen. And I also would encourage you to look at the work of MAI in www.litworld.org. Because we're having an event coming in Hungary in the spring 2022, and we're hoping that it can be done in presence, and scholarships are available, and you know what, that's how I started with them, and now I've been into
so that will be events. I'm sorry. Will that be a live in-person event in Hungary?
Yeah, that's going to be in Hungary.
Okay.
Hopefully, Lord willing, it's planned, because it was supposed to take place in October from last year.
Oh.
So it's been pushed until next year. So we hope that it can take place.
Yeah. Okay. Lord willing. Well, thank you so much, Jose Carlos, for joining us. Everyone who commented in the comments, thank you for your input as well. And if you want to learn more, of course, look out Comix35 Next Gen their website or the various places you mentioned. And for more info about the Christian Comic Arts Society, just check out our website at thechristiancomicarts.com. So, all right, well, tune in next time. We'll be doing more things. We usually have a live event every Thursday. So we'll tune in next week if you want to find out what we're doing next week. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening, guys.